Bonnie stood at the camera, looking through it with a blank stare that caused a shiver up my spine. It wasn't so much the realistically detailed teeth, it was those eyes. They burned themselves into my head, never to be forgotten, and for only a second of the camera going static, Bonnie was gone. I looked to the CCTV feed and furiously streamed to the cameras. I couldn't find Bonnie. He wasn't in any of the cameras. I checked the lights to make sure Bonnie wasn't right at the door about to kill me. He wasn't. So where was he? I heard from the CCTV feed strange noises, as if someone was scratching on a metal wall with a sharp tool of some kind. I streamed the cameras again to investigate, but the camera feed was already set on the camera which the noise was coming from. The kitchen. I got no feed from the kitchen. It was just static. Only audio was available. That's when I heard it.
Arabane. Arabane. Arabane.
My heart started thumping rapidly. What the hell? It knew my second name. I hear footsteps behind me and immediately close the door and turn the lights on. Bonnie was right at my left door and was just sitting there as if any mannequin would have done in perfect stillness. But the noise still continued.
Arabane.
It wasn't coming from Bonnie, and the noise was getting progressively louder. I checked the camera feed and saw that Chica had started to move and was nowhere to be seen. She was in the kitchen. I checked the camera feed quickly, and when I saw Pirate's Cove, I saw Foxy. He was slightly opening the curtains with his mechanical paw and was hiding in the shadows. The only thing I could see was his nose and piercing glowing eyes. The lights to my right flickered insanely, exposing Chica for only a slight second.
Arabane.
She screamed, moving her body. Twisting menacingly, I leapt for the switch and pushed the button to that door and closed it. But Chica was already gone when I checked the lights. Chica's voice was demonic and didn't sound female at all. I quickly checked the cameras and noticed Chica had moved back into the main area where everything was set up for some big party, long tables with party hats on top for everyone who sat. In the corner of the camera stood Chica, still looking at me through the camera with her bulging eyeballs. I needed to conserve power. I checked on Bonnie. He was gone too. I opened the doors and searched the cameras, skimming for anything unusual. I saw Foxy. He seemed to have moved the curtains which blocked my sight of him. He was further out this time, as if he was just peeking out of the curtains. Like Chica, Foxy looked at me through the camera, their gaze never breaking. I had forgot to keep an eye out for Foxy. I should try to be more aware of him. I had completely forgotten about my investigation. I needed to find something that would put Freddy's Pizzeria out of business for good, and it would have to be solid evidence. It was 1 a.m. now, and I had 5 hours left. I needed to find something. I wasn't planning on coming back here when it was time to go, so I wanted to get out of here as quickly as I could. I left the safety of the security room and proceeded down the hall. I kept my little gadget to check the camera feed in my hands so I wouldn't bump into any of them. The halls were full of noises, demonic noises, and what sounded like metal pipes hitting the ground echoed throughout the entire pizzeria. I reached a room where a lot of animal costumes that looked similar to Freddy and the rest of the mechanical beasts. I checked the camera to be sure none of them were close by. They were all going to the security room. I searched around investigating all the nooks and crannies of the room. I couldn't find anything, however, what the man said sounded strange. That they will file a missing person report within 90 days? As soon as carpets have been replaced and everything has been thoroughly washed and bleached. So the mechanical beasts have killed before. But how do I prove it? No doubt they have connections outside that can win a court case. I then came across a small bear that looked similar to Freddy, only smaller. But what was most chilling about this was the fact that my name was attached to it by a label. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. I turned around, and I was grabbed by the throat and was being choked. I could feel pressure in my head. My eyes started to water, and I tried to grab hold of something solid. My hand found something heavy and metal. I didn't care what it was, and I swung my entire arm towards whatever was strangling me. I felt the heavy impact, and then heard a screech. I was let go of, and I fell to the ground gasping for air. I could make out the yellow metal body of Chica standing in front of me. I ran past Chica and heard her screech. I ran for the security room. I see Bonnie coming around the corner as I run to the security room. I close the security door. I closed the security room and the other door. I was safe in here. Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy were tearing to get inside. The door seemed to hold them off, and Foxy returned back to behind the curtain, as if it had reset itself. Chica still called out my name, like she was trying to get inside my head. I waited for them to go away so I could open the doors, and I also kept a close eye on Foxy this time. I was lucky to be alive. Chica almost had me. I had kept hold of what I used to escape Chica's grip. It was a heavy pipe. I could use it to cause some damage to the mechanical monsters if I needed to. I opened the doors to conserve electricity and waited. It was 2 a.m. now, and I was constantly on edge. I wanted to look around the office, so I closed the doors again. I looked through the desks and under the table that sat in the corner, when I came across something that caught my eye. A white sheet of paper had been stuck on the wall under the table. I pulled the paper off, and it revealed a hole. I didn't know where it led to. I stuck my hand inside, and what I felt was stone. I then stuck my head inside to look, when my arm was yanked by something, and I was pulled into the hole. I tumbled down the hole, hitting rock-hard, jagged surfaces and floors. As I fell endlessly, I finally landed on a flat, hard, and cold surface. I didn't know where I was. The sound of an old generator gave me an idea I was in the basement. It was pitch black. I couldn't see a thing. I could feel a warm liquid running down my leg. Was it blood? I couldn't be certain, but what else could it have been? I walked forward with my hands in front of me, completely blind. I tripped a little on some boxes when suddenly my hand came across something sticking out of the wall. A switch. I quickly flicked the light on, hoping that light would emit into the room's bulb. Then a small light revealed something that I would never forget. The room was filled with boxes and old shelves. There was nothing inside, but that was when I noticed the putrid smell of death. I must have fallen a ridiculous height if I couldn't smell this from the security room. On one of the walls, where the light of the basement shone brightest, were 4 little children. They were hanging from the wall, all bloody and dead. Their eyes and teeth were removed. Their arms and legs were slashed at with what looked like claws, and every one of them had a large smile cut into their mouths that reached the lobes of their ears. I threw up at the sight and the smell of this horror. I tried to ignore them, but I couldn't help but look. These were children, 3 boys and a girl, all stripped of their clothing and mutilated. It was then that I heard the voice of a small girl.
Mister?
A disembodied voice of a small girl spoke. The voice came from behind me, and I turned around, only catching the sight of a girl. The voice came from behind me, and I turned around, only catching the sight of a girl's foot going around the corner. I thought that she wanted me to follow, and so I did. When I turned the corner, I was met with a hallway. It too was lit by a faint blue light in the form of bars that clung to the sides of the ceiling. I saw a girl, and she headed into the furthest room on the left. I followed the girl and went into the room. There, in the room, was a table. On the table sat a laptop, which had still been left on. There was the usual internet link to browse the internet, but Freddy's Pizzeria had only one Wi-Fi router called Freddy's Wi-Fi. But this one said, "Get out." I ignored the warning. I clicked on the file that was named Lost Children. There were images of children who had been reported missing years ago. I remember all of these from police investigations and from the news. Even desperate parents who hung a photo of their children wherever they could, offering almost everything they had as a reward. Those children were not the ones hanging from the other room. But as I scrolled down, I eventually came across them. The photos of these children, however, were different. They were taken inside Freddy's Pizzeria. They were still alive, but were hanging from a wall like they are now. The next of the pictures showed the children screaming in agony as their eyes were removed. These sick bastards won't get away with this. I had the evidence I needed now. I could expose Freddy's Pizzeria for what it really is. I took the laptop and put it under my oxter and turned. But at the door stood a girl. She looked frightened and said, But at the door stood a girl. She looked frightened and sad. Her eyes were gone, but her mouth was fine. She was the girl who was hanging from the wall.
Please, help me,
she whimpered.